Hey there, this is your orchestration tutor Thomas Goss, and it is a cold, dark, cloudy morning. It's a little after 6 a.m. here in New Zealand on a Sunday morning, and I'm just about to go on my vacation tomorrow in about exactly 24 hours, and so I am working my way through the final 5 of the dotted brev / longa entries to the 2019 Orchestration Challenge. And I've just been having so much fun so far, and I know it'll continue, having looked at all the scores. So let's get right down to it with this score by Justin. And yeah, Justin, it's really great, that you got into this this challenge this year, and that you submitted this awesome score. Now, there are a few things that we're going to talk about as we go forward, correct and adjust and everything else. But I just want you to know before that, before I give you all these suggestions and corrections, that it is a really, it's a really great piece of work, and you put in a lot of effort into it, and so thanks so much for that. Looking at the beginning, it's nice to have a first clarinet starting off rather than first flute, just for variety's sake. Nowadays, I would generally recommend, unless the piccolo changes to flute 3 all the time, that piccolo be placed over the flute, right? The piccolo staff be placed on top. That's just really much, this putting the piccolo under the flute is more of like, a 19th century publishing tradition. I would put forward. I mean, you do see it in some 20th century, even later 20th century publishing, but really it's more It goes back to harks back to that whole idea of like the third player being subordinate to the first, rather than just putting them in score order. So watch out for that. Everything else, pretty nice. I would see, I think that this is a Dorico score, so I would see if you can get your Dorico score to just have French horn in F in the middle between these two rather than on separate staves. But yeah, you got a nice full orchestra here: harp, celesta, triple winds, 4-2-2-1 brass, and three percussionists. It's all good. So nice emphasis here. Pizzicato, arco, and I like this little punch here. Then the doubling on the oboe and English horn taking over some of the pattern. That's very cool. Just kind of giving these players a rest. Coming back into it, same strategy as before. That all works great. I would say really watch out about rewriting Mussorgsky. I mean, it's actually, to me, it's kind of clever and exciting and fun to see a variation on the on the standard edition, right? On the many entries that are being faithful to Mussorgsky's harmony and everything else. But I would say probably if you were going to, if you had plans for this to be a serious concert work, you were going to take my advice, do a lot of editing to it, and get it all prepared and everything else, then I would say just maybe reconsider some of these places where you change the harmony around. Okay, like for instance right in here. Very cool though, bringing in more strings here and dropping out the bass clarinet and everything else. And I do like the way that you don't overuse mezzo piano. There were a lot of mezzo piano marks in many other scores, so good for you for just really getting that whole thing about piano being its own universe. I would say if you have a lot of this in a row, do you know what I mean? Like if you have bar after bar of like piano and crescendo, you can just make the piano invisible for your playback, and then and just count on the players to understand that they're going to just repeat the same dynamic over and over again, always returning back to piano. It's a very old convention. You see it in Chopin's scores and many other scores from around that time. Is the assumption is that that if you just see a little adjustment of the nuance in a repeated way, it isn't going to build dynamically. It's just going to present that same fluctuation over and over. There was something else too here. I'm trying to remember what I was going to say. Okay, it'll probably come up in the next part. Yeah, so we continue on. We get into the scrubbing section. And here we got just very, very plain contrast between strings, winds, and then winds and strings, right? And I like the fact that you keep the you keep it just very, very simple. And I think that there is a lot to be said for that. It doesn't always have to sort of build in texture over and over towards the loudest part, right? Which should be right here. In fact, you can get a very snarling sound. Like if everybody in the winds and strings are both playing, kind of laid back. Let's say piano sforzando here to mezzo forte, mezzo forte accent really, and then here we're really going to a forte, and the players just really push into that, which is pretty easy. If they go down, up, wham, right on this, then you'll get all the strength that you need. Little touches here from the percussion are very cool, and contrabassoon, doubling the double bass. that all works great. You could have also gone with pizzicato here too, along to the contrabassoon staccato for a very, just very punctuating effect. That might actually work better alongside the timpani, but it's still, it's just that's just an alternate way of doing it. This works fine. Okay, and our old friends the horns, wrapping up this particular idea. All works great, and now we are back to the main theme, and I noticed that it has got a somewhat different approach than before, right? Instead of wrapping things up with the oboe and the English horn, playing patterns in the last of three slurs, now we've got clarinet and bassoon. That works great too with the bass clarinet and first oboe, doubling with the strings. That's all fun. Okay, and I like the little touch of viola here with doubling the bassoons to kind of there actually will be a contrast there. So this is really nice, and I like the way that you bring things back to pianissimo. That's really lovely. And this part going forward is also kind of fun. Just bulking up the winds a little bit. We've got English horn doubling the clarinets, bass clarinet plus bassoon. This is going to get sort of somewhat darker and thicker pretty quickly, but that's all right. These touches here of celesta, by the way, are great. The celesta playing an octave above the clarinets. Now, just making absolutely sure there was a lot of confusion over the range of the celesta, people scoring it at pitch when the written pitch is actually ottava and everything else. So yeah, just so long as you were sure that you knew that this was going to sound an octave higher, right? And yeah, I mean that's the way that it's scored when you're getting this unison with harp and celesta. Not as elegant a combination as you might think, right? The two instruments don't necessarily, when they're playing unison, they can have like a kind of an edgier kind of, not really phony sound, but just kind of slightly contrived sound, right? And the other problem too is that the celesta just basically cannot play above a certain dynamic, which to the orchestra is really mezzo piano, right? So the pizzicato of the strings and the little note here of this piccolo here, that's going to be much louder than anything that the celesta is doing. The harp will be sort of heard, but like the pizzicato will sort of dull its effectiveness, right? So I mean, you are adding more weight and more punch to the sense of plucking here, but yeah, but it's not going to like, and then on top of that, the celesta. Now, if you were to put the celesta and the harp an octave higher, yet, right, then they would be gloriously audible. So watch out. Same thing over here as this bar repeats itself. Now, going on, there were some noticeable problems from this section onwards. I'm just trying to remember, like the the harmony as you wrote it out. In some of these passages, there's just one or two wrong notes, so you might want to compare that with the original. All right, just another strong argument. But I'm noticing that in some of these longa and dotted brev entries, that there are a lot of errors of harmony, and I'm hoping that people use the template that I sent out, right? And I mean, I of course I think it's great if people are just ignoring the template and just completely writing everything out by hand, as copying from or transcribing from the original score, and that's all cool. But I just like when I hear a lot of mistakes in passages like these, I'm just sort of wondering if people were using the template or not. So anyway, but yeah, right in here you kind of see that, like, if this were in D major, it just would be a hell of a lot easier to read for the players. Not that they couldn't play this, but it's just, yeah, especially like when the notes are stacked on top of each other and the player has to refer back, right, to what other players are doing and everything else. So it's, yeah, it just gets confusing in Divisi, especially when there are a lot of double flats stacked on top of each other. Okay. All right, but back to the orchestration. We're once again getting like here you're intensifying the texture without immediately making things dynamically louder, like marking it louder until you get right into the middle of this, right? Just makes it kind of more punchy, brings out the strength a lot better. Now here we're getting into some kind of wild optimism. Okay, the clarinet line is fine. I would split this up between two clarinets, right? It would be better to go first clarinet up to the A flat, or sorry, second clarinet up to the A flat, and then first clarinet taking like all of this clarino register stuff, right? And yeah, I mean, and this is just getting very. I mean, like the flute part is great, but this clarinet part, or sorry, this oboe part right here, I would also split up between first and second oboe, right? I would, in this case, I would go second oboe playing this, and then first oboe taking this upper part. But here, I feel that this is very ambitious for an English horn player. I mean, just especially at the speed that we're going, right? There are some instruments that can just toss off this kind of arpeggiation all day long. That's flute and clarinet, that natural virtuosity. Now, of course, oboe is capable of doing that, but does it sound good doing that? Do you know what I mean? Is it the opportune fluidity that you would want and expect from those instruments? And I would say not really. You know what I mean? Now here you're bulking up the flutes and oboes, and yeah, see, like here's that romantic thing, right? Of just like using the hairpins as momentary moments of flex, and something, you don't even need to put them in because that's already here in the accents, right? That implies exactly what you're marking below. So unless you had to put this in here in order to get the right effect from your mock-up, I would say just don't do that, right? Just like the accents are enough. That's exactly the same thing. You'll get that same sense of pulling out, like of the strength, pulling back on the strength. Okay, and then once again, I feel like this is very ambitious for both the violas and the English horn, right? Just really counting on them to be top-notch concerto quality players, right? So I mean, it's not as if the violas couldn't study this and couldn't get it together, but it's a lot of work for them for this one phrase. And when it could have been split up between two instruments, like you've seen, like maybe the viola's taking like the bottom, like the first four notes, and then the first's taking over on top, and then the viola's coming back in. So that's more of a viola thing to do, right? Good punctuation here from harp and celesta. So yeah, I mean, it will mostly work. This may be a lot punchier. Like it is just really going to slap the audience in the face. This big forte marcato, it's just going to, you don't need to put in staccato plus marcato. The sense of shortness is already implied. You've got that in a couple of places here. The trombones. I guess like since you have like the reverse, like you have the staccato mark on the bottom in some of these, and the marcato on top. So yeah, I would say just you don't need to do that with your brass. It's implied. The sense of shortness is implied. Same thing for your strings. Yeah, just everybody who's got that, just take away the staccato mark. then yeah, kind of same thing as before. This works much much better. Clarinet and like right even here, like you could have the violas continue on in a partnership with the first violins, right? You don't need to like, and then that would make things simpler for both groups of strings. Okay, all right, and now we're starting to build towards our mini apotheosis. Oboes plus English horn, doubling seconds and violas. Yeah, I would almost say that like it would be better to really have the violas and the second violins divvying this up between the two of them, and then to have the first violins taking this melodic part. Not because I want the seconds to never have any fun, but it's just that you'll get more. You'll just get a brighter color, and you'll get more confident playing, and the this will be closer to the audience, right? And there's a bunch of different reasons. And then you can give this line right here to the like if the violas finish off here, then the seconds could be playing this, just in a much more natural position and so on. Okay, this all works great though. I really love the whole idea of tenor register cello teaming up with the middle register trumpet. That's all very very cool, and you don't have any mute on this or anything else, and it'll work great. If you really wanted to be obsessive about this, you could give the first two baton strokes to the second player, and then these last three notes to the first player if you wanted to, but you don't need to do that. Okay, and then just intensifying of the color here and the winds, right? Which I think that should be accompanied by some strengthening here, right? In the strings. I mean, I think that we have a situation here where you're just saying piano crescendo, and then you end up with forte here, right? But a lot of times, players will interpret that to meaning to the end of the slur, right? To the end of the motive. So you really do have to indicate, like I'd say, a hairpin across, or just match the dynamic increase. And I'm kind of not sure why the piccolo is louder here, right? Why is the piccolo louder than the flutes? It is really going to cut through. It's just, I mean, that is all you're going to hear if this is the actual dynamic. What will really happen in practice rather than in theory is that the piccolo player will be hearing everybody else play softer and then going crescendo on that, and then they'll try to match everybody else, right? So you'd have to mark this like solo or some other kind of thing to really just distinguish it, to bring it out of the texture. And still with that, you're in a weak place for the piccolo, right? These are not very strong notes. Might be better to rethink this and have first flute doubling the piccolo, or just not even have the piccolo come in until right around here. And in fact, all of this is really in the weakest register of the piccolo anyways, right? So you're just adding a third weak flute to what's going on what's going on right here, right? So think this stuff over, right? And like up here, you have very, very thin oboes. It's all right because they are doubling the strings. You've already got a lot of power there because of your clarinets. Like, wow, there's just such a huge sound there with all the upper winds contributing so strongly, right? And then, of course, the texture here, as in other interpretations, is very organ-like, right? Just everybody just really coming in with very, very full harmony and doubling each other and just being awesomely large. So I've been hearing different interpretations of this, including my own, and I'm just wondering if the solution here isn't to have the melody to be loud, but the accompaniment to start off mezzo forte and then crescendo into, up to here, and then diminuendo with everybody else, so that it doesn't just become suddenly like E power bigs, just flips on the concert organ and just starts playing along with the orchestra right here, right on this downbeat. All right, so yeah, timpani. I would say just limit the notation to dotted quarter note strokes. All right, in these places, it's the hall is going to be be what carries and sustains the sound, rather than like, yeah, you can notate these longer values for the timpani. It's better just to have shorter timpanis and say forte sos, S-O-S-T, excuse me, S-O-S period, sostenuto. I think that's just a better approach for the percussionist. Yeah, and these glockenspiel notes are going to probably just be blown out of the water too, right? So, other than that, pretty good scoring. Sorry to be so picky and to deconstruct it so much, but yeah. But anyhow, nicely done, taking us rallentando fermata up to B. At this point, I think that you can trust your mock-up in that it's telling you the truth about the fact that this is going to be rather inelegant in sound. That these rippling arpeggios, with the celesta somewhat canceling out the harp, somewhat canceling out the celesta, right? So it just becomes a kind of a blockier sound. It might be good to have them placed an octave apart. Probably my preference would be to have the celesta, like have this, get rid of the ottava, and then just have the celesta playing that top part if you're going to do it that way. There's a sort of a strange notation here. It looks like you intended to have like the left hand of each player take over right here. So you need to get rid of the notes on top, right? Because this is just confusing the way that it's scored. But as for the harp, you have to think 4 fingers are used per hand, unless you are like that Spanish virtuoso who has a 5-fingered approach, who shall not be named in this challenge. See, right here you got a perfectly built into this 4 fingers, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the 4 fingers of the left hand, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So this should be the split point right here, right? And then just coming back up here to A flat, and then having the right hand take over and so on. So that would be the best way to do it, and just have it reverse here with the beams and everything else. And it's kind of strange here that you've got this A flat notated with a down stem here, but not here. Right? I don't understand that. Anyways, you might as well just do the same thing with the celesta too. It's just easier to play because both groups are starting with an A flat. All right, and this is all fine. The this rip up here, cellos, then divisi, and so on. This is great. Okay, sim, exactly the way you want to do it. Helps the copyist out. Now, you can't always trust the phrase marks, the slurs that are in the piano part. And I'm taking a look over my shoulder at the piano score. So, like, obviously what's happening here is what happened before, right? Okay, and you gave very meaningful slurs right there. So why not take the same approach here, right? Why not have those same but and do and dud and dud, right? As opposed to da ya 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 ya, right? So it just really takes the emphasis off of the teeth of that theme. And this is also like a situation where you could have made these into separately articulated notes in in each group. Yeah, I mean, and there's also the question too of the way that this is all voiced. A2 flutes on top, first violins in the middle, and then kind of lower winds below that, English horn plus bass clarinet. Right? It's. I mean, the strings in the middle will give a little bit of blending to top and bottom, but yeah, but the outside is of the outside lines are going to be pretty well defined, right? So yeah, so watch out that about that as as it creeps up on the bottom, comes down on the top with support from the strings below. The strings will actually start to cut out a little bit of the energy and radiance of the flutes unless the flutes really play out here, right? So it'll really be more strings with a very very big shiny top to them, and then these two lower winds, which yeah, and I'm not so sure about that doubling either, right? English horn plus bass clarinet, whether that will be the most opportune, because like here you're getting into the clarino register where the bass clarinet is kind of more flute like, right? And then here the English horn is going to be elegantly nasal, right? So not so sure that these timbres will blend all that well, right? Though they might be interesting to put next to each other, but I don't think you'll get like that bond or merging of tone. Okay, and then adding more voices here, right? Continuing on with these arpeggios, starting to add more brass as we go along, and I think that this is good. This as soon as you add the horns in here, it is going to kind of envelop the sound of the English horn and work together in really great ways. Okay. Just the question is, like, really, what dynamic do you sort of perceive here? You've written a lot of soft passages for French horn that go above the staff. So this is all fine, pianissimo to maybe mezzo forte, or just maybe just pianissimo crescendo, and then here really committing to a louder push. So it's just a question about like how this is really going to work out, and since you have got pretty much the same thing going on in the trumpets, right? It's just becomes much brassier and more hard edged, and at this point the English horn is basically completely, is not even needed, right? I mean, it'll add a little bit to the tone at the beginning of the hairpin, and then by the end it'll be gone. All right, so just watch out for some of those. This is just a very powerful blend in this register for the French horn plus the mid-range trumpets. Okay, and yeah, just everybody is just cruising along here in the strings, and we get to our mini apotheosis here. Yeah. And yeah, I like the snare drum. Yeah, it just has a very bouncy, fun contribution. I guess the mini apotheosis was a different section. All right, so don't worry about that. I love the way that you bring this down to piano, just like right away, and rather than over 2 bars. That's cool. It can just kind of groove and then come from somewhere instead of going loud to soft to loud immediately, right? So it has this sort of little bit of breathing space right in here. Now, right here, this is also pretty ambitious for contrabassoon. I mean, not that it's not playable. There's stuff in Dukas that is similar to this, but it's just, once again, it's a lot to prepare. You're sending that player up to A flat here, and they're supposed to be bouncy and jaunty and everything else, and yeah, it's. I mean, luckily you've got unison cellos and double basses, so that will cushion it somewhat. Um, you just really don't need these last two notes on contrabassoon, and if you think you really do need them, then give them to the second bassoonist, right? And they'll sound really, really great. Just have the contrabassoon go bum 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 bum, right, and then da da goes to the second bassoon. Okay, I mean, especially when you've got competition. Yeah, so just like timpani here and everything else, that just is a better way to use that. And then trombones, nobody's going to hear those notes coming from the contrabassoon, anyways, because it just gets wheezy and weak way up there. This is all fun. The horns, two, and then yeah. So this would need to be revoiced, right? Because this is A2 and this is intervals. So really, best thing to do in this situation is third and first, both playing the A flat. And then the second gets the E flat and the third gets the D flat. That would be a better way to voice this. And then here, this is just a mighty, mighty sound here. Off for French horns, just going for it, and it is going to push the heck out of this. I mean, once again, with the English horn being completely useless by the end of this hairpin, yeah, and all you have to accompany that with is the second violins, right? You've got so much weight on this pattern here, right? Why not add the violas along with it, right? They just need more strength here. This is good though. This bum 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 bum. Yeah, and yeah, that's all doable. That's great. Bass clarinet, that's actually a good mixture right in there, and nice touch of glockenspiel right in there. All right, and we are building up to our Borodin waltz. I'm a little confused about the lightening of the texture here, right? I mean, you are headed for something big. So it seems to me like here, this build up here would be the place to start bulking up the instruments, right? This is going to shine like you would not believe, going all the way up to that, very, very high A natural. That's just going to be that's going to cut like a knife right up in there. This is all good though. And I really love the trading off of the players, piccolo to flute to clarinet, and adding the bassoon. Okay, this is all great. And then, of course, this is a pretty obvious thing to do, adding the pizzicato. Okay, and this is kind of nice and stompy right in here. I think you can go to forte here, right? You're balancing everybody, but it's just a big. It is really a big tutti, so they can, and they're trading off as well, right? So you can go ahead and mark this forte. No need to pull your punches here. Yeah, and this is all pretty cool. Yeah, so yeah, B flat, high B flat on French horns. That is great. Underneath these strong trumpets that are going also up to their high A flat and G. So yeah, so this is going to be a really squeezed sound. G flat, excuse me. So A flat and G flat. It's going to be just nice and tight, right? Way up there. Whether it is major or minor seconds. Yeah, and this will be heard, right? Anything before then, right? In this, forget it for the harp. But this is a good place to put that. Now you just have to accept that this is not going to. Excuse me. This is not going to trade off seamlessly to the cellos. They're, you can hear in the mock-up that they're like the the difference in timbre is just immediately noticeable, and that's the same thing that's going to happen here, especially with like first bassoon. Even at pianissimo, it's going to be playing out here. So yeah, but this is all very cool. Just a very subtle return to the original theme, but not the original treatment. I really love that. I think that's very, very wise. Right, and then kind of back to where we were, right? Bassoons plus solo wind, right? And then the answering here, um, right? And all right, so we're going towards here, and once again, just really have to caution you that some of this is extremely ambitious. A really good bass clarinetist can play this, right? But almost better to divide it up between the players a bit, especially with the kind of more complicated fingering with all those sharps and everything, right? I don't know. It's only two per octave, so it's not that big of a deal. But just I just feel a little uneasy about this. And same thing here. Like this would be much better. Like you've got these violas kind of doing nothing but checking their Facebook on their iPhones, right? So they could be taking over the top of this middle, or sorry, this area right in here, and then just leaving it to the cellos. Actually, cellos, violas, right? So cellos up to here, violas, back down to cellos, and then violas, right? It's just a much easier way of dealing with material like that. And this is just wildly ambitious. Yeah, I mean, I would say that most of this should be in the bassoons, and maybe the first three notes could be contrabassoon, right? So you could go, this little A major chord, A, C sharp, E, and then back down, E, C sharp, A, C sharp, E, and then just make these E's the dovetailing notes, right? It's a little fussy to play, but it still is just, this is just not going to, that is contrabassoon concerto material. So like a contrabassoonist, a good contrabassoonist could play that, but it's like, it is so uncertain. Will the player get a good instrument? Will the player be in practice? Do they have to do, like 30 or 40 pages of Don Juan, right? I mean, you just have to be judicious in how you assign really difficult stuff, right? And then, once again, I think a missed opportunity, but rather, I just feel that just clarity right in here is better than just the longer phrases. Okay, and yeah, and this is good, building up in strength, very nice. The right way to do it, I would say, from on high here. And that takes us to this, trumpets plus oboes plus violins. Nobody's going to hear anything but these trumpets at fortissimo, right? They're just going to blast everybody out of the water right here. So if the brass were marked forte rather than fortissimo, and the trumpets were muted, then maybe you could sell this to me, Justin. Otherwise, I would say, just really ease off on that brass, or else that is all you're going to hear here. All right. And same thing with the doubling with the clarinet and the trombones. Fortissimo trombones, there goes the clarinets. They don't exist, and neither do the second violins. So yeah, and and on top of that, the French horns as well. So. But nice sudden pullback, and like if you want this to be effective, it's all the more reason why the brass should only be forte, right? So if like you're just cruising along here at fortissimo and then suddenly you get down to piano, the effect of the brass going from fortissimo to piano will also be distracting, right? It'll really distract away from the delicate tracery of your, you wrapping up these patterns in the other instruments, right? And melodic material. Okay. Okay, now this is all very cool going towards the ending. It is not without problems, and the problem that I see here is, expecting the French horn to just be elegant and beautiful and soft going up to that A flat, right? It's just that's the wrong instrument for that. See, this is where I would say, like, either drop the French horn an octave or give it to trumpet and have them play, Dolcissimo or something, right? But you've already got so much strength on that with like oboe and clarinet, and I mean, what do you need the French horn in there for, right? And violas. I mean, you're combining this, and that's all gorgeous, but in order for this to blend with all those instruments, the French horn would have to be playing pianissimo, and it can't really do a pianissimo up there to A flat. Like, I mean, it can do a pianissimo to its own dynamics, but it can't do a pianissimo to the orchestra's dynamics. Or, I mean, it can, but like the player will just be hating you the whole time, right? So, like, better to be more cautious about that. And then, once again, very, very soft above the staff is hard on the players, if not impossible for some players. This is great, though. Yeah, see, like you're covering the same area, just so much better on trumpet. Okay, and this is all cool. I love this, doubling at the octave. That's very, very neat. And I love the obvious contrasts of melodic timbral quality with all of these instruments. So cool, and a really great way to end this too, with just that little touch of celesta. So that's going to be very effective, very tingly and metallic right at the end. So yeah, so great, yeah, man, just a great contribution here, Justin. Just yeah, a great way for me to start my day of evaluations here, like just before my vacation. And and like Justin, like you joined the community and started supporting on Patreon and everything like that, pretty much in earnest. And you've been such a positive member of the community, and you've absorbed a lot of the lessons that I've taught in a really proactive way, and I'm seeing a lot of that in this score. So like just here's some more cautions and some more things for you to think about, right? But yeah, but very nice score, and thank you so much for contributing it, and please, like, I cannot wait to see what you could do with the entry that I've got planned for 2020.